CEO was signing the deal until the janitor's daughter pointed at one line. She wasn't supposed to be in the room. A janitor's daughter standing barefoot near the glass wall, holding a half-eaten granola bar. The boardroom was tense, pens clicking, papers rustling, until her tiny finger rose and pointed at one line on the contract. No one breathed. And that's when the CEO dropped his pen. This story cuts deep into how small eyes often see what the powerful miss. If you've ever felt underestimated, this one's for you. Subscribe for more stories like this and drop your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in her place? It wasn't supposed to be bring your daughter to work day. Danica James never brought her kid to the office, not because she didn't want to, but because it wasn't that kind of office. Her shift started at 5:45 a.m. sharp. Empty hallways, waxed floors, a coffee thermos tucked inside her cart. The cleaning badge didn't come with daycare, but that morning, her babysitter canceled last minute. And Danica? She had rent to pay. So she packed some snacks, slipped a hoodie over her daughter Maya's shoulders, and told her, "Stay quiet, stay close, don't touch anything." Maya nodded. 7 years old, curious as a squirrel, silent as a secret. She clutched her granola bar like it was a passport to another world. By 8:01 a.m., Danica had finished 2 floors and was wiping down the glass walls of the 21st floor boardroom. Maya waited nearby, sitting cross-legged on the marble floor, coloring on the back of a printer paper packet with a highlighter she'd found. Then came the suits. They didn't notice Danica. They never did, not unless she left a streak on the glass. But this time, one of them frowned when he saw the girl. "Is she supposed to be here?" he asked without looking at Danica. Danica stiffened. "My sitter bailed. She's just sitting quiet. I'll be out in a minute." He nodded, tight-lipped. "Make it 30 seconds." Danica bit the inside of her cheek. She wiped faster. Her hands shook. Maya stood quietly, watching the men pour into the boardroom. She tilted her head, eyes fixed on a large stack of printed contracts. At 8:07 a.m., the CEO walked in. His name was Kendall Shaw. Tall, silver-haired, Rolex talking before he did. He greeted no one. He sat, scanned the room, and clicked his pen like a trigger. "Let's get this signed," he said. Danica grabbed her mop bucket and whispered, "Come on, baby. We're invisible in here." But as they turned to leave, Maya pulled Danica's sleeve. "Mama." "What?" Danica hissed. "That paper's got the wrong name." Danica blinked. "What do you mean?" Maya pointed again through the glass. "That man there, he switched 2 pages. I saw him. The line says Shaw, but it's spelled Shan. You told me never to sign things with my name spelled wrong." Danica froze. Her eyes shot back to the table. She didn't know contracts. But she did know her daughter had a memory like a hawk and a mouth like a siren. Inside the boardroom, pens hovered. The CEO reached for the signature page. Danica looked down at Maya. "Stay here." She dropped her mop, walked back toward the glass, knocked once, and stepped inside. The entire boardroom turned, a cleaner, holding a rag in one hand and fear in the other. "Sir," she said, locking eyes with Kendall. "Before you sign, my daughter noticed something you might want to see." Silence, then chuckles, then, "We're in the middle of a merger, ma'am." But Kendall stared, at Danica, then past her, at Maya. The little girl raised her hand, finger pointing to the page again. "That name's wrong." Kendall lifted the contract, brows furrowed. Then his lips parted. "Wait." The man across the table, one of the merger reps, suddenly coughed. "Must be a typo, doesn't change the deal." But Kendall was already flipping pages, fast, focused, one after the other, and then his hand slammed down on the table. "This isn't a typo, this is fraud." Danica blinked. The room burst into noise, and for the first time in 10 years of cleaning that building, Danica didn't feel invisible. She felt radioactive. That was just the beginning. The next 5 minutes, things get louder, angrier, and way more dangerous. Stick around to see what happens when the people in power realize the one they ignored just rewrote the playbook. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if your kid spotted a billion-dollar mistake? You ever see a man in a $4,000 suit pretend he didn't just get caught? That's what happened next. The man across from Kendall, the one Maya pointed out, started laughing. Loud, hollow. Kids say the darndest things, huh? Let's get back to... Sit down, Kendall cut in. No smile, no laugh, just steel. Danica stood frozen by the door, unsure if she should step out or step in further. She didn't even want to be in this room. But something told her, something deeper than fear, that if she left, they'd spin this into another joke. Another silly cleaning lady moment. And this time, it wasn't just pride. It was $1 billion deal. And her daughter's eyes were still watching. Kendall leaned forward, slowly turning the contract back page by page. This clause was moved. He tapped it. And this language? This wasn't in the final draft. Who edited this? Silence. The same man coughed again. There were late revisions, standard procedure. I didn't authorize these revisions. Kendall's voice was low now, dangerous. Danica could feel it in her ribs. The room had shifted, like a needle snapped on a record. Everyone was suddenly aware of the girl in the doorway and the mother who dared interrupt a $1 billion handshake. One of the junior associates, young, nervous, probably new, looked like he was about to throw up. He whispered something to the fraud guy, something like, "You said it was pre-cleared." Kendall stood up. Meetings paused. Everyone out, now. Sir. Out. Chairs scraped. People stood. Danica instinctively stepped aside to let them pass, but Kendall didn't move. He turned to her, and for a moment, his entire demeanor shifted. Not soft, but human. What's your name? Danica James. He looked at Maya, who was still standing in the hallway like she wasn't sure if she was about to be punished or crowned queen of the building. That your daughter? Danica nodded. Kendall walked over, bent to one knee in front of Maya. You saved me from a very stupid mistake. Maya looked at her feet. Mama says always read the fine print. Kendall laughed once, genuinely this time, then stood. You're both staying. Everyone else can wait in the hall. The glass door clicked shut behind the last suit. And just like that, a janitor and her daughter stood alone in a boardroom with the CEO of $1 billion company. Danica didn't sit. She held her cart like armor. Kendall walked to the far wall, tapped a control panel, and suddenly the lights dimmed. Screens lit up. A massive digital contract appeared across the wall. Dozens of pages of legal text scrolling silently. He scanned it like a detective at a crime scene. And then, this was deliberate. Danica didn't speak. Someone swapped the signature page, inserted an old clause, and buried the new terms under legal fluff. It would have cost us control of 3 patents. He looked back at Maya. And she saw it because the name was misspelled? She's obsessed with spelling. Always has been. Danica offered a weak smile. Kendall sat down and sighed. Long. Your kid just saved us a decade of lawsuits. Then, a pause. A long one. Do you know how many people looked at this contract before me? He asked. 12. He turned back to the screen. Not one of them caught it. Another pause, then, Danica, would you mind if I asked you and your daughter to stay a little longer? Danica blinked. Stay? There's about to be fallout. I need a witness I can trust. And frankly, he looked at Maya again. I don't want her out of my sight. That kid's sharper than half the Harvard grads we've hired this year. Danica didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. And for the first time in her life, someone invited her to stay in the room. It's all building to this. The contracts, the lies, the silence finally breaking. What happens next? You don't want to miss it, especially when the person they underestimated becomes the one thing they can't ignore. If this moment hit you and you want more stories like it, subscribe. That's how we keep these voices heard. The room was silent now. Not boardroom silent. Surgical. That eerie, sterile silence where every breath feels loud. Kendall sat back down at the head of the table like a man who'd just walked away from a wreck and found out it wasn't an accident. Someone cut the brakes. On the screen, clause 1407C blinked in harsh blue. The line Maya noticed? Upon completion, all intellectual property herein becomes subject to joint jurisdiction as per prior agreement. Article 9, 2011. Harmless at a glance. Nonsense to most. But Kendall was no fool. That prior agreement? A dead deal. Buried. Rejected by legal years ago because it handed veto power over future patents to an inactive partner. The same man now trying to sneak back into power through a loophole? This was a takeover. Kendall said it out loud. A quiet one, just loud enough to bleed us later. Danica sat now, still clutching her cart like a lifeline. Maya stood next to her, eyes wide, biting her lip. The CEO pulled out his phone, typed something, then stood and walked toward the door. He stopped. Right in the doorway. Didn't look back. "I'm about to let a few people back in this room," he said. "I need you to stay exactly where you are. Don't interrupt. Don't react. Just watch." Then he opened the door. 3 men walked in, 2 attorneys and the executive who laughed earlier. The one who tried to play off Maya's discovery as a funny kid moment. He wasn't laughing now. Kendall stayed standing. "Tell me why this clause is in the final draft." The man, Reynolds, head of acquisitions, gave a calm shrug. "It was approved by legal. The clause was in the previous version. I assumed—" "Don't." Kendall raised a hand. "Don't finish that sentence unless you want to walk out with a security escort." Reynolds tensed. Kendall turned to the lawyers. "You two signed off. Why?" The older of the two, gray hair, good suit, bad poker face, adjusted his tie. "We were told the revisions came from your office. We had no reason to—" "Stop!" Kendall clicked a remote. The screen changed. Security footage, time-stamped. 2 nights ago, Reynolds, in the print room, alone, flash drive in hand. Kendall didn't say a word. The men looked at each other. The air in the room turned solid, like it might shatter. Danica wasn't sure what was happening, not in legal terms. But she felt it. The shift. The trap snapping shut. The mask falling. Reynolds broke first. "Look, this is a misunderstanding. If we could just step outside and—" "No!" Kendall's voice was glass. "We're not stepping anywhere." He walked back to the table, sat, then nodded toward Danica. "You see that woman?" They looked. "She's the reason we're still in control of our future. She's the reason you're not." The silence that followed? It was the kind of silence you can hear, like someone pressed mute on the world. Reynolds blinked. "She's a janitor." "No," Kendall said. "She's Danica James. And she saw you." Danica felt like the air had been punched out of her lungs. She wasn't ready for that. She didn't want that spotlight. But Maya? She squeezed her hand. Tight. Then whispered, "Stand up." Danica stood, hands trembling. But she looked them dead in the eyes. "You thought we don't see anything because we clean around you. But some of us pay more attention than you ever will." Reynolds didn't respond. What could he say? Kendall stood. "Effective immediately, you're on administrative leave. Legal will follow up." Then he turned to Danica. "You're not going back to that cart." Danica's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want you in the room. As a watcher, as a truth checker. Hell, maybe even more than that." Danica didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Maya? She already had her phone out. "Can I post about this?" Everyone burst out laughing, even Kendall. Danica James. Sitting at a desk, not a mop in sight, a security badge around her neck, and Maya beside her highlighting documents like it's her own company. This wasn't just about contracts. It was about who gets to be in the room and who gets listened to. If you've ever felt invisible, let this be your reminder. You're not. And if this story moved you, drop a comment. What would you have done if you were Maya or Danica? We want to hear from you.